Our next conversation today is with two governors. Colorado Governor Jared Polis, a Democrat, and Utah Governor Spencer Cox, a Republican. Thank you both for your time.
Pleasure to be here, Kyle.
Your Disagree Better initiative calls on elected leaders to model civil and productive disagreement. Today, Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma stood to challenge a witness to a physical fight in a Senate hearing. Governor Cox, if this is who your party's sending to Washington, how do you disagree better?
Well, look, that's why we need this initiative more than ever. I think that's a perfect example of how not to do this, how not to do democracy, how not to run a country, right? We're seeing far too many of these examples, resorting to physical violence to kind of get our way, instead of understanding, as our founders did, that we can disagree without hating each other, that we can find ways to work together, but still disagree. I think healthy disagreement is really important, maybe more important than ever. But it's this toxic, this polarizing disagreement, my way or I punish you type of disagreement that is very unhealthy and is leading to a decay in institutions, a decay in our ability just to solve some of the most basic problems facing our country.
Governor Polis, you have said that part of disagreeing better is knowing that good ideas, good policy come from everyone. So voters rejected your Prop HH tax plan, but Republicans wrote up legislation based on a lot of the things that you said that you want. End of this week, Democrats are about to throw out all those Republican ideas because they're not what Democrats prefer. Are they disagreeing better?
I think disagreeing better means listening to proposals from everybody. There's, as you know, things in what the Republicans have proposed that I certainly agree with. Now, some of them are not for the special session, which is just around the stuff that has to be done now for next year. But I do hope, for instance, that income tax cuts are part of that longer-term discussion in the regular session. Again, I don't think good ideas, neither party has a monopoly on them. And by the way, neither party has a monopoly on bad ideas either. I think there's bad ideas on both sides too. But I think by having those discussions and breaking down those barriers, which are more than just partisan barriers, in many ways it's social barriers. People just aren't talking to each other across this divide and realizing that we all care about Colorado, we all care about the country, and trying to put that first.
Is this a both sides issue, or is there a clear asymmetry at play? I guess my question is, I want to ask each of you in turn, is your party mostly to blame for where we are now? And in the end, does it matter? Governor Polis, do you think that the parties are equally to blame for where we are now?
I think that blame belongs with individuals rather than parties, Kyle. So, I mean, there are absolutely people on both sides that try, like what Spencer's doing. He's a Republican. He's leading the NGA around this discussion about disagree better. There are also people that are calling on, people to throw out election results, right? I'm sure that there are people that might have the D by their name that are also part of that conversation of division rather than unity. So I believe in individual responsibility. And whether somebody calls himself a Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, Green, whatever they call themselves, be responsible for your conduct, be part of the civic dialogue around how we can disagree better.
Governor Cox?
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction. And two things that I think need to be addressed here. One is disagree better doesn't mean I get to win every time. Sometimes we mistake that. It's like, oh, well, I didn't win, so therefore you must be disagreeing worse. That's not what this is about. But two, and I think this is really critical, it doesn't matter if it's asymmetric or not, right? That's not the point. This is about conflict resolution, and it is about persuasion, something we've gotten away from. I'm certainly willing to say that my party has lots of faults. And we can debate and argue about, okay, so my party's worse than your party. So what, right? Again, that doesn't solve any of the issues. And we do need to do a better job, both parties, of holding ourselves accountable. That's part of what this is. It's about understanding our shortcomings. But it is about individual responsibility. And I believe that our elected officials are representations of we the people. I don't think that Washington, D.C. and even the governors are going to solve this, although we're certainly trying to do our part. It's incumbent on every single one of us, the way we interact in the morning on Facebook, the way we interact with our family members, with our neighbors. It's about communities, the loneliness that we're seeing, this tribalism that is taking the place of real connection. It's all headed in the wrong direction. Both parties are headed in the wrong direction. If one gets there faster than the other, that doesn't help the trajectory at all.
We all have an exercise coming up. It's called Thanksgiving, a day of national gratitude. And across families across America, there are often, MAGA uncles and woke nieces. And so the fact that we can all come together is a real life example of how we can show that love for family and appreciation of family across these divisions that are really hurting the civic nature of our country. So I'm hopeful that those lessons that we're talking about can be not only practiced during Thanksgiving, but also brought into the body politic.
Let's take a tough issue
Okay.
where you two disagree, and you can explain how your philosophy on this might get us to a better place. The issue of abortion. Governor Polis, you signed Colorado's abortion on demand law. Governor Cox, you banned abortion clinics from performing abortions in your state. How do you disagree better on that issue? Governor Polis.
Well, first of all, I think hopefully all of us have friends that are pro-life and pro-choice. I certainly do. And I think it's also some common ground around, and you know, there were those who criticized me for this, but I said, abortion is not the goal. The goal is to prevent unwanted pregnancies. Obviously, I believe in freedom. This is a woman's choice. The government should not interfere with this decision. It's her body. Spencer has a different opinion on that. But I think that there's common ground around how you can empower women with sex education and birth control to prevent unwanted pregnancies, understand the importance of consent and elevating that. And so there's a lot that you can agree on, even though you might have a very diametric viewpoint on the underlying issue.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Look, if you look at the abortion issue, it's a really fascinating case study across the country in that most Democrats don't believe in abortion all the time forever, you know, until birth. And a lot of Republicans don't believe that there's never a case for abortion, although there are certainly some that do. And so the majorities are actually somewhere in the middle. Like, is abortion okay, you know, first trimester, but not second trimester? When do we draw those lines? But more importantly, again, where can we find common ground? And this is the area where Jared and I Governor Polis and I can find common ground, in that I believe that any abortion is a failure. Something got to that point. No woman is better off for having an abortion if you can avoid the pregnancy in the first place. So that's where we can start to build common ground and find areas where we work together. Hold men more accountable for their responsibility. It takes two to get someone pregnant, right? So we're not doing nearly enough to hold men accountable. I think that's something that he would agree on, that I know I agree on as well. And so we can look at the margins and fight about the margins, or we can start working at some areas where there's agreement.
And he's not going to change my mind. I'm not going to change his mind on whether it's okay to have an abortion. But we still can work together in a way on this issue around reducing unwanted pregnancies and empowering women and men to take control of their own reproductive health.
One thing that has rising prominence in American conversations these days is some pretty virulent anti-Semitism. Governor Polis, do you see anti-Semitism rising within your own party? And if so, what can be done about it?
So sadly, anti-Semitism is not a product of the left or the right. And we've seen skinhead rallies with right-wing neo-Nazis. We've, of course, very recently seen it on the left. I think what's important as leaders is to speak with one voice and say it's not okay to discriminate against somebody based on their religion. Anti-Semitism is not okay. Islamophobia is not okay. And it doesn't mean, again, that you have to agree on a very challenging and vexing issue of Palestine and Israel and peace in the Middle East. But you need to respect everybody for their humanity and make sure that it's not acceptable to discriminate them just because of their religion.
Governor Cox, you said recently that Americans are either going to stop hating each other or we're going to start shooting each other. Here in Colorado, there are some far-right figures that are openly thirsting for a shooting war. There's one activist who suggested that Governor Polis be hanged, and that earned him a nomination on the floor for governor at the Republican Assembly. Has your party lost its internal struggle with extremism? Is this kind of a battle that's already been lost?
Well, look, I don't think there's any battles that have been lost. I mean, again, I think we should all be pushing back against extremism in any form. You just talked about extremism when it comes to anti-Semitism, extremism when it comes to racism, threats of physical violence and intimidation. What we do know is that across the country, threats of violence towards members of Congress have increased tenfold in the past 6 years. That's not a 10% increase, that's a 10 times, a tenfold increase. That's what's happening in our country, and it is extremism, and I don't mean to do the both sides thing, but it is both sides, and even just the nature of these questions, it speaks to the problem we have in our country. Those people, right, that party, they're the evil ones, and this is what's leading to this degradation in our country, in our institutions. When we do that, right, this idea that both parties are just defined by their extremists, that's incredibly dangerous, because then it gives us, if I think that Democrats Democrats are willing to violate the Constitution to get their way, then I'm much more likely to allow my side to do that as well. See, this is that polarization that is so dangerous. So just the nature of the way we ask these questions makes us feel better. If I feel like Democrats are anti-Semites, well, I feel much better about myself. If Republicans are extremists and dangerous and violent, that feels better for the left. But the truth is, like, there are really good people who are Republicans and really good people who are Democrats. And we've got to stop this demonizing of party and applying that to everybody in that system.
And we have to stop launching our own projections onto the other side. I mean, whether there's a Democrat saying, "Oh, see, that right-wing Nazi is Republican, therefore all Republicans are Nazis," or saying that left-wing Hamas sympathizer is a Democrat, therefore all Democrats are like that. Both parties are not broadly anti-Semitic, and I think that's important because that's sometimes lost in the fervor among the very few on both sides that are not part of disagreeing better and in fact part of attacking other fellow Americans.
Yeah, and I would argue, we know that there is an exhaustive majority out there, a majority of both parties who do not like what's happening. They hate where our politics is heading. We're just not offering them any other choices. Like, we have two national candidates for president who are highly disliked on both sides, and yet this is the path we're headed down. And so we're hoping that through this initiative we can at least remind people of what has made this country so great, our ability to disagree as the most pluralistic society in the history of the world, this grand experiment that we're still embarking on. We're still part of this as we head towards 250 years as a country together. The experiment isn't over. We still have a lot of work to do.
How much of this has to do with elections, and how much of it has nothing to do with elections?
It's a lot broader than just governors. So there's a lot of nonprofits that are doing this very work, and part of what Governor Cox and NGA and I are doing, we're pulling together kind of the best and brightest people across the country working on this very topic at universities and think tanks, really working on how we can bridge this divide that ails us. There's a cultural aspect to it, and we're in talks about how we can bring in kind of the mainstream culture. I think governors can add to it, we can convene, but certainly it's nothing that Governor Cox and I think, oh, the governors are taking this on, we got it solved.
Yeah, and look, elections matter. Obviously, elections are important. There's usually a binary choice, right? There's a winner and a loser, and we all want to be on the winning side of those things. And so bringing more people together to work on this, to understand the direction we're headed, I think is really critical. And look, I want to be very clear. Politicians are very responsible for what's happening in our country. Too many politicians have figured out that they can use fear of the other to divide us, and I'm the only one that can save you. Those people are trying to destroy our country, therefore you must vote for me. And we have a responsibility to be better than that, to message better than that.
I want to ask you both specifically about an example of that fear of the other, the likes of which a number of historians have said we've never seen in American history. Very recently, former President Trump referred to his political enemies as vermin, talked about rooting them out. Historians and journalists said, that's the language of extermination. Like, history has seen this before. To which his spokesperson said that people who say that their entire existence will be crushed when he becomes president again. When you hear stuff like that, what do you hear?
Well, that's not only the opposite of disagree better, but it is downright scary. I mean, it's scary for journalists, for Jewish Americans, for LGBTQ plus Americans, for many Americans who see themselves in those comments of the people that the former president is calling out.
Yeah,
what do you hear?
I agree. I mean, I think that's an example, again, of the worst part of our country. And yet it's a message that resonates, sadly, with too many people. Again, because we're trying to convince people that the other side is out to destroy us. And if you think the other side's out to destroy you, well, then we have to respond in kind, right? And so that I think that's really important to understand. And there's a lot of polling on this, that if you ask Republicans and Democrats what they believe, we're actually not that far apart. We just think we're far apart because of the media, in large part, not every media, no criticism taken here, but we tend to elevate the most extreme voices, right? And social media does that by algorithm. Like the crazier and more extreme things you say, you're much more likely to get time to get that reposted and shared by people who agree with you and disagree with you, right? We're going to share this, flood the market, and the algorithms work to do that. And so that type of, I will say, that type of rhetoric is very dangerous. and we have to, again, I think we have a responsibility as elected officials, as people who are running for office, to be better than that and saying those types of things about our fellow Americans. There's nothing more un-American than hating our fellow Americans, and I'm tired of Americans destroying each other. We have lots of bigger problems out there. Stuff like that, you know who that helps? That helps Vladimir Putin. It helps Xi Jinping. It helps Hamas, right? The people who are out there who are doing evil things in this world, they love that we're tearing each other apart.
The opponents of President Trump are not vermin. The opponents of President Biden are not vermin. There's plenty of good Americans who agree or disagree with the policies of both. When it goes to the realm of character and name calling and threats, that's when it really crosses the line.
A last question for both of you. Why are you so much more optimistic about this than I am? Governor Cox, first you, and then Governor Polis, final word.
Because I don't have any other choice. I have to be optimistic. No, I'm optimistic because of what I said before. We've seen the data. There's great work being done out there. That most Americans hate what is happening out there. They're just dying for something else. Sadly, neither party at the national level is offering them any other choices right now. But at some point, somebody's going to figure this out. They're going to do it the right way, and Americans are going to respond. I also just believe at our core there are too many good people out there. We just had a huge service project. People are giving back. They're building communities. They're helping each other. We just tend to focus on the train wrecks. That's human nature. I get it. But the people out there doing good work are far outweigh those that are trying to tear us apart right now.
You know, you have the position of being objective because that's your job. We are in this fight, and so we have to be the happy warriors against all odds. I hope they're not as steep as you think they are, but against whatever odds there are, to try to create a better America, one that people can disagree without being disagreeable, disagree better, have authentic conversations, come together around our civic virtues and our love for our states, for Utah, for Colorado, for our country.
It's an interesting conversation. Governor Cox, Governor Polis, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.